Now let's talk about a topic called zone delegation. And you've probably heard it from me before if you've taken any of my other courses. I don't know if I've said it in this one yet, but DNS is usually some sort of genetic thing, and you've either got that gene or you don't. And for those people out there who don't have the DNS gene, DNS for some reason with some people, there's just a disconnect, and they just can't get it. They can't get their head wrapped around it, and it's just irritating. And I don't know why that is. It's just one of those technologies that seems to work that way. Part of the reason I think is because a lot of the names that are used in DNS don't necessarily visually reflect what's going on. So this may be one of them. You will hear about zone delegation on the exam when they're talking about DNS. So let's answer the first question. What is zone delegation? Well, the easiest answer is it's just where you divide a DNS namespace into multiple related zones. You see this all the time. You don't even think about it. For example, you have Microsoft.com. If we go into Microsoft.com, it takes us to their home page. But then there's technet.microsoft.com. And all that's telling us is that in the Microsoft world, they wanted all traffic that has anything to do with TechNet. They wanted all those DNS records to be handled by a zone called technet.microsoft.com. So it just simply means dividing that DNS namespace into multiple related zones. Now, in a different video back, and I think it was DNS Basics, we looked at a little diagram of the root DNS server and then the various com.net, .org servers. And then since Microsoft had registered in the .com domain, then they have an authoritative zone for Microsoft.com. Now, within Microsoft, they decided to do a zone delegation. Instead of putting all the records right here in this zone, they said, let's move all the TechNet records into their own zone. And that's just what they did. They simply created a new zone, and they put all the TechNet DNS records in there. Now, let's talk about why do we want to do this? Did we just not have enough to do that day and we decided to set up a zone? No, here's three pretty good reasons. Number one, we want to delegate administrative or management authority, responsibility, tasks to other people. You know, we want you TechNet guys to handle everything. We're going to give you your own DNS zone. Y'all handle your DNS records, all that stuff. You can also create smaller zones for improved performance and to balance traffic. This may well be what Microsoft was doing. Imagine how many hits Microsoft gets to their home page and all the other pages in a day. And by kicking this DNS response for TechNet stuff out to a TechNet zone, they can improve performance, balance traffic, and so forth. And then when you're adding a new branch, site, or department, a lot of times people will go ahead and do this. And this decision to give a zone for each particular branch, site, or department is usually an outgrowth of one of these two up here. So just keep that in mind as you answer questions on this exam. So what's involved with setting up a new zone or doing zone delegation? First of all, we will go into our DNS tool and just right-click on our server and say create a new zone. And you'll create a new zone. And then once that zone is created, you're going to add delegation records to your parent zone. So you're going to go up to the parent zone that was already there, and you're going to add a couple of records. First, you're going to add a name server, an NS resource record that tells that DNS server where the new zone is and that new zone is authoritative for that new delegated zone. In the Microsoft example, they would have gone out, created a new zone called technet.microsoft.com. Then they would have gone into Microsoft.com and created an NS name server resource record that designates the new zone as authoritative. And that NS record would point to technet.microsoft.com. Then they would put a host record, either an A record or a AAAA record, to point to the server that's specified in the NS record. So whatever server is going to be holding the DNS records, that's the IP address we're going to put on both that name server record and that A or AAA record. You'll hear it called glue chasing. Now that's useless trivia almost. They're not going to ask you about that on the exam. But if you ever want to intimidate some nerds in a meeting somewhere, just mention, yeah, we did a little glue chasing on our DNS there. All that means is adding that A host record to match that name server record. But that's all that's involved with zone delegation to set that up. Now, real quickly, let me just step you through something here. Let's go out and open and click on Start Administrative Tools. Go out to my DNS tool, and you'll notice on my forward lookup zones, I'll expand that so you can see it. Here we had VTC class. I will right click on forward lookup zones, click on New Zone, say Next, and I will set up primary zone, and what's the name of it, and then I'll set it up as TechNet. Next, we'll only go ask secure updates and finish. And so there's our TechNet. Then notice here is some name server records and start of authority. We want to go in and start to set these. And so we'll start to change these and set records in those so that we can take care of creating this delegated zone. Go in and play with this, grab you some documentation, make sure this is making sense to you, and then you'll be able to get out there and do some cool stuff with it.